Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Representatives from the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police say that a young university student and congressional intern is dead this week after he was gunned down in a senseless act of violence believed to be targeted at a completely different person. The disturbing incident unfolded on the night of June 30th when 21-year-old Eric Tarpinian Yakim was walking near the Washington, D.C. Convention Center. He was at the corner of 7th and M Streets just before 10:30 p.m. when suddenly a car pulled up and multiple unknown people got out. Moments later, the suspects opened fire in Eric's direction. By the time authorities arrived at the scene, the shooters were long gone, but Eric and two other people were lying injured on the ground. The 21-year-old was rushed to a local hospital alongside an unidentified woman and a 16-year-old boy, all of whom were treated for gunshot wounds. While the other two victims managed to pull through, sadly, Eric did not. He was pronounced dead the following day. The situation is especially tragic because it's been reported that Eric was not the target of the violent attack. It's believed that he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. As for exactly what happened and why, police say they are investigating, though some reports state that the intended victim was the 16-year-old boy. Many are now mourning Eric's loss, saying that he should have had a bright future ahead of him. The 21-year-old was a senior at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and was supposed to graduate in 2026. He was spending his summer as an intern in Washington working for Kansas Congressional Representative Ron Estes. In a statement, Representative Estes said in part, quote, "I will remember his kind heart and how he always greeted anyone who entered our office with a cheerful smile. We are grateful to Eric for his service to Kansas's 4th District and the country." At the time of this recording, police say they have recovered the vehicle used in the crime, though they're still working on identifying and arresting the suspects. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Metropolitan Police immediately.
A tragic and senseless ambush in South Carolina has left a young sheriff's deputy dead this week, just days after he began his solo patrol duties. The whole thing began in the early morning hours of Tuesday, July 1st, when deputies responded to a home on Old Timers Court in the Lamar area of Darlington County. It was about 1:30 a.m. when 27-year-old Deputy Devin Mason, along with a second officer, arrived to arrest a wanted man. That man was later identified as 25-year-old Cameron Ray Dennett, who was reportedly facing charges for criminal conspiracy, forgery, and unspecified computer-related crimes. But before deputies could take him into custody, the situation took a deadly turn. Authorities say that shortly after the two officers entered the home, they were ambushed. Gunfire erupted, and when it was all over, both Mason and Dennett had been shot. Tragically, Deputy Mason succumbed to his injuries. The second deputy, whose name has not yet been released, was hospitalized and is said to be in stable condition. Cameron Dennett was also killed in the exchange. Authorities later confirmed that he wasn't supposed to have a gun in the first place, and while the exact motive behind the ambush hasn't been determined, officials have made one thing clear. This wasn't just a routine arrest gone wrong. This was an intentional act of violence. In a statement following the incident, Anderson County Sheriff Chad McBride called the deadly encounter an ambush, alleging that the reason the crime turned deadly was in part because Dennett's mother lied to Mason and his accompanying officer. When the deputies arrived at the property, 77-year-old Linda Dennett reportedly told them that her son wasn't there and asked them to leave. It was when Mason went to open a bathroom door that Cameron Dennett allegedly began firing from inside without warning. As a result, Linda Dennett was arrested and has now been charged with obstruction of justice and misprision of a felony. Another woman, 28-year-old Kristen Porter, was also taken into custody at the scene on similar charges that Cameron Dennett was wanted for. Neither woman was injured during the disturbing ordeal. Following the incident, Deputy Mason's superiors described him as someone that should have had a, quote, bright future in law enforcement. Heartbreakingly, Mason had only been on the job for about a year, having joined the Darlington County Sheriff's Office in 2024. He graduated from the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy in March, completed his field training just last week, and had only been on solo patrol for 7 days. On top of that, he had recently become a father. According to reports, Mason's first child was born just 2 months ago. Sheriff Michael August spoke about the young deputy's impact in a statement, saying, quote, "In his time with us, he demonstrated unwavering dedication, integrity, and professionalism. Deputy Mason served the people of Darlington County with heart and honor. Though his time with us was far too short, his impact will not be forgotten. At the time of this recording, the incident remains under investigation.
Authorities in San Antonio say that the founder of a well-known Texas restaurant chain is dead this week after he was allegedly killed by his own nephew during the middle of a psychotic episode. The whole situation began on the morning of July 1st when police were called to the palatial home of 78-year-old Edward Ron Acosta. According to reports, Ron was a wealthy businessman and had made his money after founding and growing the popular Tex-Mex restaurant chain Las Palapas. However, his successful life had just come to a shocking and brutal end. When officers arrived at Ron's mansion that morning, they found him lying unresponsive and covered in blood in his garage. He had been stabbed multiple times and sadly was pronounced dead at the scene. Ron's housekeeper, who was also the person that called 911, told police that Ron had been attacked by his nephew, 39-year-old David Ruiz. Ruiz lives in California, but had come to town to visit several family members, including Ron's son Aaron. Though Ruiz had fled the scene by the time officers arrived, after several hours of searching, police located him about 100 miles away in Kimball County. He was pulled over and taken into custody at a truck stop. While the exact details of how the awful crime unfolded are still being investigated, relatives who spoke to local media said that they believe Ruiz was experiencing a serious and ongoing mental health crisis at the time of the murder. He reportedly left his home in California 2 days before the fatal incident, telling them he was headed to San Antonio to see Aaron Acosta and had also planned to visit his brother in Austin. Ruiz's father told reporters that his son hadn't slept for 4 days before leaving and was experiencing paranoia and hallucinations. And while he admitted that he knew his son was carrying weapons with him when he left, including a handgun, he claimed his main concern was that he would hurt himself, not someone else. Ruiz's father was concerned enough that he contacted Aaron Acosta when he left for San Antonio, telling him what was going on. It seems that Ron later invited his nephew into his home in an effort to take care of him and make sure that he wasn't alone with Aaron. In the aftermath of Ron's death, Las Palapas put out a statement mourning his loss. The company wrote, in part, quote, "Ron's impact reached far beyond the restaurants he helped build. He brought people together, created jobs and opportunities, and shared his love of culture and community in everything he did. He will be missed more than words can express." At the time of this recording, David Ruiz remains in custody on a charge of first-degree murder.
A pediatrician from Oklahoma is facing first-degree murder charges this week after authorities say she murdered her own 4-year-old daughter during a family vacation and then staged the crime to look like an accidental drowning. The disturbing incident unfolded around 3:30 a.m. on June 27th at a short-term rental home in the suburban Miami village of El Portal. That's when 36-year-old Neha Gupta, who was in Florida with her daughter, Arya Talathi, called 911 to report a drowning in the backyard pool. When officers in fire rescue arrived at the property, they found 4-year-old Arya unresponsive and still submerged in the water. First responders immediately pulled her from the pool and began CPR. She was rushed to a local hospital, where she was pronounced dead about an hour later. At first, Gupta told investigators that she and her daughter had spent the day at the beach and riding jet skis before having dinner around 9 p.m. She claimed the pair of them went to bed around 12:30 a.m. and that she was awoken about 3 hours later by a strange noise coming from the backyard. That's when she said she found the sliding patio door open and Arya floating in the water. She said she couldn't swim, but attempted to help the child for about 10 minutes before calling 911. But investigators quickly began to suspect something wasn't right. According to an arrest affidavit, the medical examiner who conducted the autopsy noted that Arya's lungs and stomach were free of water, a major red flag in a drowning case. The pathologist also found bruising on the girl's cheeks and cuts in her mouth that were not consistent with life-saving efforts. Instead, the injuries pointed towards asphyxiation by smothering. In addition, the child's empty stomach contradicted Gupta's claim that they had eaten dinner at 9 p.m. Authorities say the autopsy results, surveillance footage from the property, Gupta's own recorded statement, and input from the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office all led detectives to believe the drowning had been staged. Shortly after the evidence was reviewed, a warrant was issued for Gupta's arrest. By that point, she had already returned to Oklahoma. On Wednesday, July 2nd, Miami-Dade detectives traveled to Oklahoma City, where, with the help of local homicide detectives and the U.S. Marshals, they located Gupta and took her into custody. She is now awaiting extradition to Florida on a first-degree murder charge. Gupta's attorney, Richard Cooper, has since released a statement saying he is, quote, disappointed that the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office succumbed to pressure and rushed to judgment, adding, quote, as a result, a grieving mother who just lost her daughter is in jail. We look forward to a full investigation, which will uncover the truth of the matter. Meanwhile, investigators have revealed that Gupta was locked in a bitter custody dispute with her ex-husband, Dr. Sarab Talathi, at the time of her daughter's death. According to court records, the two divorced in 2024 after a contentious 2-year legal battle. Gupta was denied sole custody, and Talathi told police he had no idea she had taken Arya out of the state. A temporary protective order Gupta filed against him for alleged domestic violence was later dismissed after her claims couldn't be substantiated. Just weeks before the trip, Gupta was fired from her job at Oklahoma Children's Hospital and the University of Oklahoma. In a joint statement, both institutions said, quote, Dr. Neha Gupta was suspended from patient care, given notice of termination, and was no longer seeing patients as of May 30th, 2025. At the time of this recording, Gupta remains in custody and has not yet entered a plea. Police say a final ruling on cause of death is still pending, but the preliminary findings strongly point to homicide.
Authorities in Michigan are dealing with an unusual suspect this week, after they say a 12-year-old boy was caught stealing multiple vehicles and was allegedly selling them for just $30 apiece. According to officials from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, the boy was arrested on June 28th following a weeks-long investigation into a rash of car thefts in the city of Pontiac. The area is historically known as the birthplace of several General Motors models, and more recently, a hotspot for vehicle-related crimes. Detectives say they'd been tracking a string of thefts that included 4 vehicles taken from a single business. After struggling to identify a suspect, investigators decided to set up a stakeout at one of the affected parking lots over the weekend. And that's when they finally caught their man, or in this case, tween. According to the sheriff's office, the boy entered several vehicles in the lot before being stopped and taken into custody. When deputies searched him, they found he was carrying a license plate, presumably stolen as part of his mini crime spree. A statement from the department revealed that the child had swiped at least 3 or 4 vehicles over the past month, and had even managed to sell one of them for just $30. It's unclear if the buyer had been identified or charged. Commenting on the situation, Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard said, quote, "This young man is on a very bad path, attempting to live his own grand theft auto." He added that he's hopeful the boy's early encounter with the justice system might steer him toward a better direction, while also bringing some relief to the local business owners who've been repeatedly targeted. At the time of this recording, the boy is being held at Oakland County Children's Village while the case remains under investigation.
A North Carolina landscaper is in hot water this week after police say he broke into a client's mansion and used it to host an unauthorized, chaotic house party. The whole thing went down on Saturday night, June 21st, when 37-year-old Michael Brown, the owner of a local business called Brown's Dream Team Landscaping, allegedly threw a massive rager at a private home in the Union County town of Weddington. The twist? Brown didn't live at the property. In fact, he wasn't even supposed to be there. According to the Union County Sheriff's Office, Brown used his previous access as the family's landscaper to enter the mansion while the homeowners were away on vacation, and then invited hundreds of people to party. Deputies say Brown advertised the event, likely through social media, and told guests to bring cash. It's estimated that between 300 and 400 teenagers and young adults showed up. Witnesses say the home was packed wall to wall with loud music, property damage, and signs of underage drinking. As the night wore on, the chaos spilled out into the neighborhood, and it wasn't long before deputies started receiving calls about noise, traffic congestion, and reckless driving. When officers arrived at the scene, they were met with a full-on disturbance and an accused party host who was determined not to tell the truth. At first, Brown allegedly claimed that the home belonged to him. Then, when that didn't fly, he said it was his grandparents' place. It was only after what officials called several more, quote, epic failures at telling the truth, that Brown finally admitted that he was the lawn guy and had no connection to the homeowners whatsoever. Deputies say that several agencies had to respond to the scene due to the sheer number of partygoers. In the chaos that followed, numerous people fled the area recklessly, resulting in multiple traffic stops. Inside the home, law enforcement found extensive evidence, including damage to the property and empty alcohol containers. They also recovered the money Brown had collected in entrance fees. He was arrested a few days later on June 24th and booked into the Union County Detention Center. In a press release, the sheriff's office joked that Brown, quote, was specifically told he was a guest, not a resident, and ordered not to throw any parties in our phone cell while trying to secure a bonding company. Brown now faces a long list of charges, including breaking and entering, second-degree trespassing, obtaining property under false pretenses, injury to real property, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. He has since been released on a $10,000 bond. In an interview with local news, Brown denied most of the allegations, claiming the whole thing was a graduation party for his son and his son's friends. He said the entry fees were only collected to cover potential damages and maintained that no alcohol was served to minors. Perhaps most bizarrely of all, Brown said he still expects to do landscaping work for the homeowners in the future. In his words, quote, "I'm just waiting for them to come home, just so I can continue to build my relationship and we can move forward." In other words, it doesn't seem like Brown has gotten any better at telling the truth. At the time of this recording, no court date has been announced, but the case remains under investigation.
Authorities in Polk County, Florida say that a local teenager is facing charges this week after he allegedly made a series of unhinged threats against an employee at a fast food restaurant because they messed up his order. According to reports, the whole thing started late one night last week when the suspect in question, 18-year-old Dayton Schaefer, went to his local McDonald's in the city of Lakeland. After purchasing a $5 meal deal, he left, but later realized the business had forgotten to include the chicken McNuggets he had ordered. When Schaefer discovered this, he phoned the McDonald's and the manager immediately offered to make things right. However, the teenager apparently had a different solution in mind. In 3 separate phone calls, he allegedly went on unhinged and swear-word-laden rants against the restaurant and its employees, during which he reportedly threatened to, quote, "shoot this shit up." Understandably concerned that Schaefer was going to return to the McDonald's and start killing people, the employees locked the place down and contacted police. They were able to quickly trace the calls to the 18-year-old who was hanging out at his friend's place. And while he reportedly tried to claim his McNugget freakout was just a joke, police weren't buying it, and he was placed under arrest. Speaking of jokes, though, authorities made plenty at Schaefer's expense after he was taken into custody. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd recounted the situation in a video posted to the department's Facebook page a few days later. The video is filled with McDonald's-related wordplay, but personally, this is my favorite part.
It seems that maybe he didn't get his McNuggets, his chicken McNuggets. Well, you'll find in a second that this guy acted like a McNut.
At the time of this recording, Dayton Schaefer is now facing multiple charges, including felony misuses of a two-way communication device and false report of a bomb or weapon of mass destruction.
Authorities in Chicago are investigating a horrifying mass shooting this week after a late-night drive-by outside a downtown lounge left 4 people dead and at least 14 others wounded. The whole thing happened around 11 p.m. on Wednesday, July 2nd, in the city's River North neighborhood, specifically outside the Artist Restaurant and Lounge, located on the 300 block of West Chicago Avenue. According to police, the lounge had just hosted a listening party for local rapper Mellow Bucks when a dark-colored vehicle drove past the entrance and opened fire on the crowd standing outside. Within seconds, at least one person, but likely more, unleashed a hail of bullets into the group before the car sped away. According to Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling, investigators now believe there were 3 shooters involved. He also confirmed that 2 different calibers of shell casings were recovered at the scene and that there's a possibility a rifle was used. Among the dead are 25-year-old Leon Andrew Henry and 23-year-old Devontae Terrell Williamson. Police say the men were taken to a local hospital where they were pronounced dead. 2 women, ages 26 and 27, also died after being rushed to a second hospital with gunshot wounds to the chest. In total, 18 people were shot in the attack, 11 of them women. The wounded range in age from 21 to 32 and suffered injuries of varying severity, including 4 said to be in serious to critical condition. One of the victims who survived the ordeal, Shania Battle, told reporters that one of the women killed was her sister, Aviance King. Meanwhile, rapper Mellow Bucks posted a series of emotional tributes on social media, mourning the victims, including her boyfriend, Devontae Williamson. In one post, she wrote, quote, "We were having so much fun in our private little life, couldn't leave each other alone, glued to my hip every day." In a separate message, she added, quote, "Prayers up for all my sisters. God, please wrap your arms around every last one of them. Feel like everything just weighing down on me. All I can do is talk to God and pray." As for a motive, police believe the shooting was a targeted attack, with at least some of the victims connected to Mellow Bucks' inner circle. However, Superintendent Snelling wouldn't confirm whether the shooting was gang-related, only saying that police would be out in full force to prevent any potential retaliation. Snelling added, quote, "They didn't care who was struck, and in a matter of seconds they were able to shoot 18 people. The venue, Artist Lounge, has since been shut down by the city. Investigators say their probe into the location is still ongoing, especially given that the same building was the site of another mass shooting back in 2022, when it was operating under the name Hush Lounge. In that case, one person was killed and 3 others wounded after a group had been kicked out, returned, and started fighting. At the time of this recording, no arrests had been made. The suspects remain at large. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, everyone, and take care.